Welcome to session number 3 of the series Beyond Resolution, a conflict exploration for practitioners and professionals that are dealing with conflicts on a daily basis. So mediators, coaches, therapists, HR people, anybody that has to deal with conflict on a daily basis will will gain something from this series. So a quick recap of the series that we where am I? Yeah, I got distracted by Myra, my dog. She's sitting in front of me and she's doing funny faces. So I got distracted. Sorry about that. So the series is three sessions in the series. We started this. If you're watching live, then we started this 4 or 5 days ago on Monday. Now we're on Friday, August 7. So on Monday, August 3, session number 1 was about exploring what conflict is. And the main message that came from this session, actually there were two messages. One is conflict is a signal. It's not a problem to fix. It's a signal that something deeper is happening. Conflict is not what we see, like the example I was giving, a breakdown in communication. That's what we can observe, but that's not the conflict. The conflict lies a little bit deeper, that the cause of the conflict creates the breakdown in communication. So it's the breakdown in communication is not the conflict. That's the problem that we can fix. But if we focus on that level to just fix the problem, we're not addressing the conflict. So conflict, whatever happens on the surface, whatever we see, whatever people bring to us, that is a signal that something a little bit deeper is happening. And the second message, or the second concept that we explored, was around a conflict intelligence. So just like emotional intelligence, the conflict intelligence, it's the ability, it's the sensitivity, it's the sixth sense to read a conflict and to understand that, first of all, it's a signal. What we're seeing, what we can observe, is a signal that something is happening a little bit deeper. And then we develop the intelligence to read that conflict and to know exactly how to support resolution, how to intervene, or so on and so forth. So conflict is a signal, and conflict intelligence helps you, or enables you to better read a conflict, to know exactly what it needs to guide the situation and the parties towards resolution. Session number 2, we covered the differences between managing a conflict, resolving a conflict, and transforming a conflict. So the conflict management, resolution, and transformation. When we talk about conflict management, is that we're dealing with the problem to fix. We're managing the conflict in a way that it goes away. So in the same example, the breakdown in communication, that's not the real conflict. But when we manage the conflict, it means that we're addressing the problem, ideally by fixing it or by making it go away. By making it go away, if you have two employees that are headbutting and they don't get along and the communication breaks, that's not the conflict. The conflict is a little bit deeper. But managing the conflict would be to separate the two employees. So the breakdown in communication is not relevant anymore. It doesn't happen. It's not observable anymore. But the conflict is untouched. The conflict is still there. We're just managing the situation. And if we bring back the two employees together, the conflict, the observable elements of the conflict will come back really rapidly. So that's managing the conflict. Resolving, so conflict resolution, it's about addressing the situation, going a little bit deeper and actually addressing the conflict in a way that we address the conflict, we explore some processes to engage both parties, and at some level the dynamic or the relationship between the two parties will change. So when they come to an agreement, when they come to a resolution, the conflict per se will not, like, the same situation will not recreate itself, but the conflict, part of the conflict remains, because the two parties, they how can I say, the two parties explored the situation, the dynamic between the two, but most of the time, not always, but most of the time, the conflict, the actual source of the conflict lays much deeper. And that we explore the question, like, is resolution enough? And if not, what lies behind or after, what comes after resolution? And it was the opportunity to use the conflict as a source of, as an agent of transformation. So same situation, breakdown in communication. If we address the breakdown in communication, we're managing the situation. If we address the dynamics between the two people, so maybe how people express themselves, how the one party expresses itself, the other party listens, the way they listen. So you coach the two parties in expressing themselves better and listening better. So the dynamic changes. That's going to resolve that. They're going to come to a resolution that's going to resolve the conflict, the situation. And in some situations that is enough, because you don't need to go deeper, because if the situation, the dynamics changes but then stays that way, the appearance of conflict will not come back. So sometimes that's enough, but there is an opportunity when a conflict presents itself. There's an opportunity to go much deeper and use the conflict to transform not just the relationship, but both people that are directly involved in that conflict, both parties, maybe sometimes more than two parties. And also, it affects who we are as a practitioner, as a professional. So it's really important to differentiate managing the conflict, resolving the conflict, and transforming the conflict, or using the conflict as an agent of transformation, because that's where the power lies. Once we transform the situation, once we use the conflict to transform the parties, and usually ourselves too, then the parties are completely different. So it's not even the same situation, it's not even the same dynamic between the two. They're transformed, so the relationship will be rebuilt on new bases. So that's why it's completely transformational when we do conflict transformation. Makes sense? So it's really about understanding that it's an opportunity, it's an invitation. When conflict comes up, it is a signal to go a little bit deeper. And then when we realize what the conflict is, when we can read it with some conflict intelligence, then we know that there's an opportunity there to actually reflect and to actually transcend the conflict in transforming the parties. And more often than not, that transformation affects us professionals, practitioners in conflict management or resolution. So that's a quick recap of session 1 and session 2. Now we're going to jump in session 3. If you have your workbook, you will need your workbook for this session. So I will hopefully you have it if you've been registered at the for the Beyond Resolution series. Then you got the emails referring you to the Beyond Resolution resources page. You can download your workbook there. If not, I will put that link in the comments. So if you're watching this replay, you will have access to that workbook also. So today, what we're going to do this session, we're going to take everything that we covered in session 1, session 2, and we're going to bring it together and focus mostly on transformation. So the opportunity that conflict offers us to go deeper and transform the situation, transcend the conflict, and transform the parties. And as always, if you've watched session 1 and session 2, you know that we work with exploring questions. So I have guidance, I have some of the answers, but what is important is when we explore one question, what comes up for you? What are the insights that come up for you? And those are really the golden nuggets of knowledge that you want to focus on. So it's really when we explore those questions, it's really about letting the answers come up for you in the related to the conflict that you have chosen. Maybe in session 1, maybe you change in session 2, but today we're going to use one of those like that main conflict that you chose to explore, and to complete your conflict intelligence map. That's the conflict that we're going to choose today. So first question is, what level is this conflict actually living at? So if you go at the in your workbook, you don't need the workbook for this first part, but the second part you will definitely you'll definitely need it. So the first question, let's say, when we explore the transformative possibility or opportunity of conflict, there are 7 layers, 7 levels where conflict can reside. Usually what happens is that we focus on 1 or 2 levels. Usually what the different processes that we have in conflict management, conflict resolution, usually it's about the expression, so communication. How do I express myself? How do I listen? The way I interact with people. So like what? How do I show up? Like what do I say? Do I controlling, managing my intonation, tonalities and whatever. So it's mostly usually about communication, because the idea is behind that the idea is that if I express myself better, the other person will understand, and then we'll come to a resolution, we'll come to an understanding. So that's why most conflict management resolution approaches are based on communication. If we just communicate better, we can understand each other, and then I can accept your point of view, you can accept my point of view, and then we can come to an agreement or a negotiation on those on that level. So unfortunately, it's not it's rarely, I will say, not never, but it's rarely about the actual communication. Like I was the example I was giving a little bit earlier, and I gave in the session 1, if we observe a breakdown in communication, it's not about the breakdown in communication. There's something behind that. There's something deeper than that that is causing the breakdown in communication. So if we address the breakdown in communication, what we're actually doing is addressing or is managing the conflict. We're managing the situation. If we're looking into what you'll probably recognize, into positioning, into interests, into values, then what we're observing, what we're looking at is can happen at the 2 level. So either the communication level, so what my beliefs that and my values that bring me to say something specific in a certain situation. We can observe the triggers, we can observe the interests, we can find common grounds that are explicitly shared. So we would work on the level of communication, and we can also when we get into values and various elements like interests, we can work on the relationship too. So we can work how we express ourselves to each other and how we communicate, and we can also work on the dynamics of the relationship. I think the first thing that comes to mind is the power imbalances. So a high senior level executive dealing with an employee, when they both enter the room, the relationship is quite different than if it's two people that are walking off the street, or two neighbors that are having a difference, a dispute. So exploring those relationships and then how they talk with each other, that's also another level of transformation. But usually it pretty much stops there. If we get outside to uh, a different area than communication and relationships, it's usually other processes or other techniques that are enabling us to go there. And the richness of the transformation is to allow yourself and to guide the parties in getting out of those areas, getting out of the communication and the relationship uh, dynamics, and to explore something else, something deeper than those two elements. Sometimes, rarely, the conflict sits at that level. Most of the time it sits outside of that, and those are the levels that we're going to explore today. The 7 levels that transformation goes through, from the deepest level, the most intimate, all the way to the greater purpose that we can find in conflict. So quickly, if you have your workbook, you can follow along in your workbook. Quickly, we're going to go through the 7 levels, and then there's some exercises to do with that to complete your conflict intelligence map, so you can use it. You'll have the full process, and then you can use it again for any conflict that feels stuck, either in your practice or in your personal life. All right. I see there's a comment online. Finally here in time. Thank you for being here in time. I really appreciate you being live. Okay, so the 7 levels. So what level is this conflict actually living at? So like I was saying, it's rarely at the communication level, rarely at the relationship level. It's usually below that. It's deeper than that. So the 7 levels in order. Well, in order. It's not like you go through the order and that's it. The levels are always at play. But you'll see that starting with the first one, the base one, and then building from there has its importance. It's relevant to follow that order. And when you follow that order, you will easily identify where the conflict is actually stuck. You can go from what you know, let's say the expression level and that breakdown in communication, and then explore a little bit above, a little bit lower, and see exactly where the conflict is stuck, or the conflict is well stuck or living at where it's sitting. Or you can go from the bottom, the base, and then do check-ins with you can do check-ins with the parties directly, but also with yourself. Like, it does how does that level feels okay, then we switch, and then you'll find where the conflict is getting stuck. So first level is space. Physical space and psychological space are the two main elements to create safety in the exploration of a conflict. And it makes sense. You, as a professional, you would not bring two people together if one felt threatened and the other one was bullying, because the safety is not safety in the space, and psychological safety is not present. You're not going to bring two people together. So the first element, when we start exploring a conflict with the we're leaning into the opportunity to transform the situation, transcend the conflict, and guide parties into something more. We're trying to build something from that conflict, not just eliminating the conflict or kind of containing it. We're trying to create something from it. Then the first step that we need to verify, the first level we need to confirm, is safety. If it does not feel safe for one of the parties or for ourselves, that's where the conflict lies. We have to start with creating safety. If safety is present, that's great. We can go to the second level, which are all about emotions. And the what we want to look at that level is that, are people engaged? Are they retreated? Are they shutting down? Or they're engaged in the conversation? So we're looking for aliveness. We're looking for people to be alive and engage in the process. If there is anger that is coming up, the person will disengage. They're going to, well, maybe they're going to be really engaged, but more enraged than engaged. But the conversation, the connection will cut off because emotions are too high. Or if somebody gets scared, if you establish safety and then you switch to emotional exploration and then somebody shuts down, it's because they're not feeling safe enough to explore that. So safety first, then emotions. You can explore a little bit of the emotions. Then it's the third level is identity. That usually, not usually, I would say, but often conflicts are sitting in identities, like the positioning and the interest and the values. The identities are often where conflict are getting stuck. And in I would say in the normal or regular conflict management or conflict resolution, we don't go there. We don't explore the identities. We're trying to figure out how the parties can talk to each other better, the relationship dynamics, power imbalances, and things like that. But then the identity, when we explore the identity, the question to explore is, what do the parties have to lose to be able to connect together? What do they need to let go to connect together? And if they're not ready to let go something, it's because it is linked. That resistance is linked with letting go a part of their identities. So you'll hear stuff. You'll hear phrases like, I cannot agree with them because I wouldn't be. It would not be respectful for me. I wouldn't be authentic. Like, I cannot go on with this. I cannot agree with the other person. So when you hear examples like that, it's because it's the identity level. The conflict is stuck in identities, and both parties are pulling on each on their sides to preserve their identities. So what you do in that case, when you're dealing with identities, you can go back to safety, recreate safety, explore some emotions, then you can come back to identities. Of course, there's more to it than that, but basically the how you use that those 7 levels, that framework, that's how it works. After identities, it's all about relationships. So now we're in the relationship dynamics, the power imbalances. Sometimes the conflict is there that people the next one is communication. So people tend to not be authentic in their communication because there's a power imbalance between the two parties. So when you're not in this situation, you would not take away the power imbalance, but at least recognizing it and then making sure that both parties feel equal in the exchange, in the process. Then you know that it's probably going to be okay. And then you'll see, you will hear that the communication will change based on addressing the relationship level. So after the relationship level, it's the communication. So the communication level will be highly influenced by the relationship level. Relationship level is influenced by the identity one. Identities are influenced by emotions, and so on and so forth, until the base, which is all about space and safety. So space, emotions, identity, relationships, communication, or mostly expression. Communication is obviously a two-way street, but we're focusing more on expression, so how each party express themselves. And then the last two are intuition and then spirituality on the top. So intuition is when there's, you know, people say the right things, the communication is okay, but there's a feeling behind that, like it's either too good to be true, or it sounds too good, or the person might be placating the other person, vice versa. So when it's too good to be true, it's your intuition telling you that something is off, and you need to listen to that intuition. So you need to explore that level to go through the full transformation. And then ultimately, the spirituality level, it's the concept that we are all connected, we are all one. So the opportunity of the conflict is to transcend it and create something out of the conflict. So if we are in conflict, I'm suffering, you're suffering. And the moment that going through the transformation, going through the 7 levels, when we get to the point where, wow, we can actually learn from the conflict, we can do better. It's not just about learning how to speak to each other. It's about being maybe being more respectful, maybe having empathy towards one another, maybe being more humble in the power imbalance, and understanding that, hey, wow, you're a human being as much as I am one. So we can exchange and connect on that level, which is much higher than the relationship dynamic where the conflict might have been stuck. So those are the 7 levels: space, emotions, identity. There's the relationships, the communication slash expression level, the intuition level, so the feeling inside, and the spirituality level, where we go beyond the two parties and we create something from the conflict. And if the conflict was not there, or if the conflict was not addressed, we could not create what comes out of it. So that's why it comes at a higher level. So when we go through the 7 levels, that's when the transformation actually takes place in the for the conflict. And in that transformation, it influences the two parties. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it also influences us as practitioners and professionals. All right. So uh, before we jump into the workbook and the exercises, I want you to ask yourself a question. You don't need to answer, in the comments. Those answers are for yourself only. You can share your answers, but keep in mind that it is a public platform. So if you want to keep your answers for yourself, more than enough. You can write stuff down in your workbook also. So the question is, which levels of this conflict have you been looking at? So the conflict that you've been kind of experiencing, exploring for the last 2 sessions, which levels of this conflict have you been looking at? So have you looked, is it a communication problem where you've looked, like maybe if they talk to each other in a better way, maybe if they listen more. I got tools for to help them express themselves and listen more. And maybe there's a a conflict in vocabularies or just languages. Someone speaks English, someone speaks Spanish. They don't understand each other, so that's where the conflict is. That's where we're going to focus. Like, is that level where you're looking at, is it the relationship dynamics? It might be the identities, might be like the everything is going well, but then you have a feeling that there's either an opportunity for more to go deeper, or there's something that doesn't feel right. Is that at that level? And the second part of the question is, which have you been looking away from? So I know that for me in my practice for years and years and years, I did not want to hear anything about identities and emotions. I did not want to go there. I was creating safety. I've always had the feedback that I naturally create a safe environment, and people trust me, which is great. And I was creating that safety, and I was jumping right into communication, and then a little bit of relationship that would explain the communication. And I was dealing with that sometimes. Well, like I said in the session number one, for years I was managing the conflict, meaning I was addressing the problem and trying to fix it. Then I understood that resolution it works a little bit differently. So I started resolving conflicts, and I was mostly resolving conflicts through better communication and through empathy and understanding, trying to change the dynamics between the two parties. I did not want to explore emotional stuff. I did not want to hear about the suppressed emotions or how somebody felt in the conflict. For me, it did not matter. It was the relationship, the dynamics, which was influencing the communication. So if we address both, for me it was a-okay. And the didn't want to go into the emotional level, didn't want to go into the identity, like the past traumas and how I show up on the day of the, let's say, the mediation. I did not, for me, it did not matter, as long as everybody felt safe and we explored the dynamics between the two parties and how they communicated. For me, that was enough. And so that's resolution. And sometimes it's enough, but there's always the opportunity to go deeper. So for you, for your own benefit and own reflection, what do you usually look at? Which levels do you actually look at? And which one are you looking away from? Not usually, it's not consciously, but it can be conscious to say, like, I'm just not going to go there. I'm not interested. This is not part of the problem. So for your own reflection, which do you tend to focus on and which do you tend to try to avoid at best? And then that's going to give you a little bit of the gap that you have to that prevents you from leaning fully into the transformational process of conflict, or the transformational opportunity of conflict. And it's not about a lack of skill. It's not like something that I cannot fully lean into transformation, so I should change my career or something. That's not about that. You're highly skilled. You have a bunch of tools, processes at your disposal. The switch between resolution and transformation will require something different from you, and that's what we're exploring now. So, like I shared, for me, for years I was focusing on how parties communicate and what is the relationship between the two when they walk in the room, and I was completely missing the identity part, the emotional part. And I was when I had hunches that something was needed, I would not listen to that, and sure enough, I was not creating something out of the conflict. I was completely missing the opportunity for transformation. So it to go from managing to resolving, it requires a shift in perspective. It requires something different from you. And from managing, from resolving to transforming or transformation, it requires a change of perspective, and it requires something deeper of you. So that's why we're exploring this. So you're aware of your possible blind spots in those well, mainly in the transformational opportunity. Okay, so now let's jump into the actual workbook and complete the conflict intelligence map, so you know how to reuse it for each conflict that shows up in your either professional life or personal life. It works the same for both. So the question is, where is this conflict most alive? So in your workbook, you have on page 8, I think, you have the 7 levels. So space, emotions, identity, relationships, expression, intuition, and spirituality. So check the levels that for you the conflict feels most alive, where it's sitting the most. So where you feel that uh, it's really engaged. So is it a communication problem? Is it a relationship issue, relationship dynamic issue? Is it two identities that are butting heads? Is it are there too much emotions in the room or in the situation that the two parties are not open or are not aware of everything else? Emotions level, there's also all those triggers that, like the past stories, that when somebody speaks to me in a certain way, I get triggered, and the emotions, I get flustered or frustrated or angry or sad. So the emotions take over. So is that at the level that it's at? Is it at the safety level, the space level, where one or both parties or yourself don't feel safe to engage in that conflict? And then is it intuition, spirituality, any of those levels? Check the boxes where you feel that it's most active. And then another question to go through the book. So the questions, the prompts that are right after the levels. So where in your practice are you not yet able to guide someone through what is actually being asked? So again, that gap of saying, like, okay, the I'm looking at the usually the communication and the relationship dynamics, but now I see with those 7 levels that the conflict I chose to explore is probably sitting right into the identity level. Or maybe there's quite a bit of emotions that are brought up that both parties would benefit to deal with before coming to the table to talk with each other. So there's a well, not double question. The first step is to identify where the conflict lives the most. And the second step is, do you have the capacity and the tools and the knowledge to bring people to explore, to guide people into exploring the levels that you checked where the conflict is most alive? Again, that's a personal reflection. I'm getting you through that reflection, and then you'll have that completed conflict intelligence map that you can come back to for any conflict. First, kind of see where, from your perspective, where it's sitting at, and then go through the 7 levels and say, okay, like I thought it was a communication issue, but it's really an identity level. So I have to explore that before the before addressing the communication. And you'll see that when the conflict sits in a certain place, let's say the same example, you think it's a communication issue, but really it's two identities butting heads or being confronted. Once you explore the identity level, the communication level, the communication issue won't be there anymore. So when we address a lower level, it opens up, it frees up the higher levels. So that's why we start ideally at the bottom, and then safety, well, space, safety for space, physical and psychological space, then feeling safe enough to explore those emotions. Then when the emotions are explored, then we have access to the actual identities, how people show up. Once that is explored, then we have a more authentic and humble relationship dynamic. Once that is settled, then we have authentic communication, and so on and so forth. So where in your practice are you not yet able to guide someone through what is actually being asked? So 2 questions ago was on which levels, and obviously it's new levels for you if you haven't explored the 7 levels framework before. So which levels were you focused on, and which levels were you intentionally or not, consciously or not, avoiding? And now the thing is, now that you know that you're aware where the conflict is actually living compared to where you thought it was, where you were trying to address it, is there a gap that you feel you need to close, to be able to guide your clients, to guide the parties where they actually need to go to transform the conflict, to use the conflict as a source or agent of transformation, to transcend the situation and be transformed and create something out of that conflict? Is there a gap in it can be in skills, it can be in capacity, it can be of space. The psychological space is also important for you. So if you don't have the psychological space to deep dive into the emotional level because you're going through stuff yourself, that's an important element to consider. You don't have to transform the conflict if you don't feel ready for it. We need to listen to ourselves much more than we need to listen to the parties. It's important to understand and to listen to what they're actually saying, but it's really important that we listen to ourselves, because how we show up will influence how the dynamics and the communication and the relationship and the outcome of the process that we're guiding, that we're supporting. So it's really important that we feel good when we engage in conflict. So that's to kind of explore what's the difference, and do I feel capable, am I able to guide the parties into the exploration, the deeper exploration that needs to happen. And continuing in the workbook, what pattern keeps showing up regardless of what you try? So that's with the next page. You have the what is called the triangulating the resolution. So every single conflict that is recurring has a pattern. And to identify that pattern will give you access to what needs to happen at the deeper levels to unblock, to unstuck that pattern. So as I was sharing in the session 1 and 2, the conflict that you chose to bring to this exploration, it's obviously something that is still happening. If the conflict was resolved and you could turn the page and leave it on the side, you would do that. So when the conflict you chose is still happening, so in that conflict, because it's still happening, it means that there's a pattern to it. So the 3 elements of the triangulation of the resolution is the pattern So what keeps happening in the conflict? Is it always the when two parties come together, it's the same triggers, it's the same situation. And again, if they change the way they communicate and the way they relate, it stays for a bit, but then at one point the identities come back up, and then it's the same triggers, the emotional triggers, and then we're back into the same conflict, or the same breakdown in communication, or whatever is the conflict, whatever is the observable elements of the conflict. So there's a pattern that comes back, either often or sporadically, but every time that it comes back, your clients, the parties, are back with you, and you're trying to rework the communication, rework the relationship. It works for a bit, but then when the pattern comes back, the conflict comes back. So there's always a pattern that keeps coming back. There are always actions that you're doing that to deal with the conflict. And in those actions, it might be managing, or it might be resolving the conflict, addressing the dynamics. So the conflict kind of either dies down or is pushed on the side, and then we hope for the best. And there's also the internal state. So your internal state and the internal states of your clients, of the parties. But because we cannot know their internal states unless you ask them, then we're going to focus on ours. So pattern, what keeps coming back; action, what you're doing to address the conflict, to resolve it; and how do you feel inside when you do those actions to address those patterns. So first question is, what pattern keeps showing up regardless of what you try? So the pattern just keeps showing up, repeating, and you're trying to address it in different ways. It's not addressing the actual issues, well, the actual conflict, where the conflict lies. Then the second questions, well, the two other questions is, describe in one word for now. Then after you can elaborate a little bit, but one word that would describe the actions that you've been doing, the actions that you've been taking. So one word. Is it like a discussion? I bring parties to discussion. Maybe it's conflict coaching. Maybe it's mediation. Maybe it's it could be punishments, or reprisal. Maybe not reprisal, that's not a good word, but it could be some type of formal process that was implemented to address the pattern. But the pattern keeps coming. So anything that you did in the action side, and try to summarize it in 1, 2, 3 words, what you have been doing to address that pattern. And then a single word, ideally a single word, then you can elaborate, but 1, 2, max 3 words to describe how you've been feeling inside while dealing with all of this, by seeing the pattern coming back, by trying to fix it through different actions. How did it made you feel inside? So are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling maybe inadequate? Are you feeling is it working at some level, and you're feeling like like it's working, you're feeling good? Are you feeling desperate? Are you feeling sad? Like whatever you're feeling, your internal state, by having tried so many stuff, so many actions, taken so many actions to address the pattern, and the pattern keeps coming back. Okay. So that's the triangulation of the resolution, is that there's always a pattern, the actions that you're taking, and how you're feeling inside. And to break that, so that's the triangulation of the regulation, the triangulation of the resolution. Here we go. Those are the three elements. So to transcend a resolution, to really transform, use the conflict in with the opportunity of transformation is that we need to break that pattern. We need to address the pattern in a way that it's not it is broken and it's not going to come back. We need to change our actions, because if we do certain actions and the pattern keeps coming back, then it's not the right actions for to address that pattern. So we need to break the pattern with different actions, and we also need to feel differently inside to be able to do those different actions, to choose different actions which will break that pattern. So for the to understand the conflict, we need to triangulate it. So establish the pattern, uh, enumerate the actions taken, and then explore how we're feeling inside. And to reverse that, to get into the transformation, we need to change how we feel. So we take different actions, and it's good, which will finally break the pattern in that triangulation, which means that we will transcend the conflict, we will transcend the situation, and the transformation will affect and inspire both parties. And 9 times out of 10, it also inspires the professional dealing with the conflict. And it's the same thing if it's a personal conflict. Then with a personal conflict, there's always a pattern. There's always something that the other person does and that we do. We both contribute to the conflict. There are always actions that we're taking. Sometimes we can try different actions, but if it always comes from the same inner state, so if the pattern happens and it triggers me and I try different actions, but I'm always frustrated or I'm always suffering or sad, then the actions will not be enough, because I always come from the same place, the same feeling. They're not going to be different enough to break the pattern. So to break that triangle and to transcend the conflict, I need to feel different. I need to shift my internal state so my actions are different and they actually address the conflict. So the pattern breaks and doesn't come back. All right. So and now I gave you I went a little bit a little bit ahead of myself, and I gave you the answer to the next question, which is, what would transformation actually require from you, whether you're directly involved in the conflict, or you are a practitioner professional guiding parties through various processes. What would transformation actually require from you? it, in a very small nutshell that recaps everything we saw today in the last almost hour, is that we need to change our internal state to take different actions which will break the pattern that keeps coming back. So that's the main answer for this question. That's what transformation, that's what is required from us to go from resolution to transformation. The transformation starts with us. The parties have to get involved for sure, but the transformation starts with us. We need to show up differently in the work we do. So we initiate that opportunity. We seize that opportunity of transformation when the conflict shows up, and then we can guide the parties, our clients, through that transformation. And the 7 levels framework that is in your workbook, this one framework where you can guide people and explore each level. And when you start with the space level, physical space, psychological space, and you work your way through the 7 levels, by the time you come to the spirituality level and you create something more is taken or is created from that original conflict, I can guarantee you 100% or full money back, full money back, that that specific conflict will never happen again between those two people. And even better than that, when you start transforming conflict in a, let's say, a work environment, a workplace, you will see that each conflict that you transform will have an impact on the culture of the workplace, the culture of, if it's a company or a department, whatever. It will have an impact on the culture of the workplace and the environment. So that's an extra invitation to lean into transformation and really give it your best shot, because as we explored in session 2 and earlier in this session, transformation is always available. Is it always the right answer? Not all the time. Sometimes resolution is enough, and sometimes the parties will not want to lean into the opportunity to be transformed. That can happen, but the opportunity is always there. So it's a decision, an engagement, a level of engagement and commitment when we get a conflict to choose: am I going to manage what is observable? So the breakdown in communication, I'm going to manage the breakdown by separating the two parties so they don't communicate anymore. So then the conflict is managed, it's contained. Or do I choose the resolution to go a little bit deeper, explore the communication, explore the relationship dynamics, and see if that can be influenced? Or do I really lean into transformation, the opportunity of transformation, and guide my clients, the parties into that transformation in a way that it transforms them, it changes them, it changes the dynamic between the two parties, and ultimately it also affects you, it also inspires you to show up differently. And that's the question here: what would transformation actually require from you? It's to for you and also the parties to show up differently. To do that, the 7 levels framework and the conflict intelligence map will serve you to address any and all conflicts moving forward. Not as long, but every time you choose transformation, the conflict intelligence map and the 7 levels framework will serve you really well to that effect. So, on that note, I will wrap up this session and this series. We have three sessions. This is session number 3. As always, you can always put your questions or comments in the comment section. And if you want to ask me questions more directly, there are 2 ways to do that. Either email me directly through, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, on this YouTube channel. You can message me directly. Or also, if you're registered to the Beyond Resolution series, you're receiving emails from me, so you can reply to any emails and ask me the questions that you want. And it's going to be my pleasure to guide you through those that exploration, the conflict intelligence map, and the 3 sessions of the Beyond Resolution series. I thank you for your participation and your presence and the engagement online, on the live, and in the comment section. I invite you to use that conflict intelligence map for every single conflict that you have, that you're working with, and see if you are called to lean into the opportunity of transformation. That's where the magic happens. That's where the true resolution, it's even more than resolution, the transformation happens. And what I can share is, once I understood that those differences, managing, resolving, transforming, now I'm always I always want to be transforming. I always want to lean into transformation. Like I said, it's not always possible, but when it happens, and it's always available. Sometimes the parties don't want to go. Sometimes I don't feel ready to go that deep into certain situations. But when everybody is open to exploring that and everything clicks, it's the best, one of the best feelings in the world. So I wish you to explore that, to lean into transformation, to use that conflict, that opportunity to transcend the situation and to create something out of the abundance of that the conflict presents to you. So thank you. Take good care of yourself, and we will see each other probably in another video or another series. Thank you for your thank you for being you and doing this work. It's really important. I will see you soon. Take good care of yourself. Namaste, my friend.